Hatchet Job and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the Millennial joining me today is, of course, Christopher Hopkins, our producer. This podcast is called Florida Hatchet Job. Why, ladies and gentlemen? Because Governor Ron DeSantis is going to be announcing his presidency today. It's actually this evening at 6 p.m. And he's going to be doing it, get this, first time ever, on Twitter Spaces. Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk. So it's on Twitter, but of course it's the video version of Twitter where you can have long conversations. And Elon Musk apparently is going to be present at this announcement, which I'm not necessarily sure is an actual endorsement, but I don't know, Chris, sure sounds like an endorsement to me if you're going to be on there with Elon Musk. Yeah. And by the way, this is a free speech platform. So Governor DeSantis is making a statement by announcing his bid for presidency of the United States on Twitter Spaces. He's saying, you know what, I'm going to go on this free speech platform first and let all of the other news media, the legacy media, the crooked media, let them pick it up from Twitter Spaces and report as they may, which of course, you know, they're going to report as they may. And almost predictable, the NAACP issues a travel advisory. So you might ask yourself, what does that have to do with Governor DeSantis announcing his presidency of the United States? It has everything to do with it. Why does it have everything to do with DeSantis running for president? Because the NAACP's travel advisory was for Florida. They're literally saying, the NAACP, hey, don't travel to Florida because it is openly hostile towards African Americans. Can you believe that? And the timing of it, okay, the timing of this statement from the NAACP, right around like 2 days before Governor DeSantis announces his run for president of the United States. It's not a coincidence. It's so predictable. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, the NAACP has never issued a travel advisory in my lifetime that I'm aware of before. I've never heard this, okay? Now, if you have, please, by all means, tell me, but have you seen any travel advisories to the city of Chicago or to Baltimore? I mean, there probably should be travel advisories there where you have massive black on black murder and violence and car theft and mayhem. That's where it would make sense to maybe have a travel advisory or maybe implement school choice, but I digress. But no, they're doing it to Florida, the one place in the country that actually works, because Governor DeSantis is running for president. So I decided to pull up the CNN article, bear with me on this, about the NAACP advisory. So here's the CNN article. Another advocacy group is warning people of color about traveling to Florida. Another advocacy group. The alerts from groups representing Black and Latino Americans come as the state's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to enter the 2024 presidential race with a campaign built on tenets of the conservative agenda he's fostered in Florida. The NAACP issued a travel advisory for Florida in direct response to DeSantis' aggressive attempts to erase Black history and to restrict diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in Florida schools, the group said Saturday in a statement. So did you hear that? To erase Black history. We have Black History Month, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? We have Black History Month. No one's trying to erase Black history. Quote, beware that your life is not valued, NAACP President and CEO Derek Johnson told CNN on Monday. He cited a new DeSantis-backed law allowing gun owners to carry a concealed weapon without a permit, as well as education policies that include a ban on teaching gender identity and sexual orientation through 12th grade. The announcement came days after LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, issued a travel advisory for Florida after DeSantis signed a new immigration law that will go into effect in July. So I have to stop there. LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, well, it's clearly not a united citizenship of Latinos, okay, and Latinas. And here's why. Because Cubans love living in Florida. They're Hispanic. And Cubans vote Republican. You know who else likes living in Florida? A lot of Central Americans, because they love the fact that there are opportunities, not just to work, but to move up. You know who else loves Florida? Venezuelans, because they're so happy to be out of their country's communist dictatorship and have an opportunity to be free in Florida. But no, according to the League of United Latin American Citizens and the NAACP, you are not free when you're in Florida. Do you see, ladies and gentlemen, how coordinated this is with the DeSantis announcement that's supposed to be happening this evening at 6 p.m.? Of course you see it, as I see it. And why? Why is this happening with the NAACP? Well, it's happening because of the fact that each successive presidential general election, fewer and fewer, as a percentage, that is, of black voters are sticking with the Democrat Party. Yes, it's true. The Democrat Party has an overwhelming percentage of black voters who vote for the Democrat president of the United States. But the fact of the matter is, as a percentage, more and more are waking up and seeing that they are being duped and used. So the NAACP, of course, has to stir up, as does Joe Biden, stir up racism and stir up the past and make it sound as though Florida is this awful place, which is completely and utterly nonsense, because Florida, if you're black and you're poor, is the one place you can have school choice and go to a much better school than you would otherwise be forced to go to, public school. That is a fact. And here's another really interesting tidbit you may or may not have heard. The CEO of the NAACP, the president and CEO, Derek Johnson, who issued this ban on behalf of the NAACP, guess where Derek Johnson lives? Florida. So Florida is such a terrible place that this paid CEO and president of NAACP, who makes plenty of money, mind you, decides and has chosen to live in Florida. So it's like, so people were tweeting, oh, by the way, if that were really true, why are you still living in Florida? Why don't you show everybody, as a way of leadership of the NAACP, that you're going to move out of Florida yourself? Of course, no response from this guy. He's going to stay in Florida because it is a wonderful place to live, to work, and to raise families. Both LULAC and NAACP, according to CNN, say actions under the DeSantis administration are hostile to their communities. Quote, Florida is openly hostile towards African Americans, people of color, LGBTQ plus individuals. Yeah. When was the last time you were in Key West? I'm pretty sure that's not true. The NAACP said, before traveling to Florida, please understand that the state of Florida devalues and marginalizes the contributions of and the challenges facing the African Americans and other communities of color. Yeah. Which is why in my home state of Maryland, you will see many of the members of the black community in Baltimore vacation in Florida and often say to me, gee, I sure wish I could live there. Yeah, I bet you could. Maybe you could live in a state that was equally nice called Maryland if you actually started voting for people that wanted to truly improve your life. So all of this is stirred up. Why, ladies and gentlemen? For one reason and one reason only. And that reason is that Ron DeSantis is announcing that he wants to be president of the United States. So naturally, the left is terrified of this guy because he is, in my opinion, by far the most articulate candidate. And by articulate, I want to clarify what I mean. He is the most articulate conservative. He is truly able to explain conservative values and how those conservative values can be expressed in legislation and help all people, no matter where you are, no matter where you come from, no matter how you look. He is the person that's best able to do that. He's done it in Florida, and he actually flipped Florida from a, like a Democrat state slightly to now a Republican state solidly. And it is an incredibly important state to the country in terms of its economic prowess. So media outlets have also claimed a Florida school banned a poem. This was also timed, ladies and gentlemen, to attack Governor DeSantis. This just came out, this article. And guess what happened? The Daily Caller just debunked the whole thing. Media outlets claimed a Florida school banned a poem, yet the poem is still available. Several media outlets claimed that Florida school had banned and restricted a poem despite it being available to the students. Politico, USA Today, and The Guardian ran headlines Tuesday claiming that a school within Miami-Dade County Public Schools, MDCPS, had banned, quote, "The Hill We Climb," after a parent complained that the poem read at President Joe Biden's inauguration contained hate messages. However, MDCPS clarified in a tweet following the stories that the poem had not been banned. Rather, it was deemed more age-appropriate for older students and moved to a section of the school's media center intended for middle school students. Quote, "In order to ensure accurate information, MDCPS is compelled to clarify that the book titled, quote, 'The Hill We Climb' by Amanda Gorman was never really banned or removed from one of our schools. The book is available in the media center," which is the library, by the way, in the schools, "as part of the middle grades collection," the school district wrote in a tweet. However, Politico reported that the book was removed from circulation from the K-8 Bob Graham Education Center in Miami Lakes, citing both documents released by the Florida Freedom to Read Project and reporting from the Miami Herald, which clearly state that the book remains in the school. Similarly, the Guardian newspaper headline read, "Amanda Gorman gutted after Florida school bans Biden inauguration poem." So look, I have some feedback to give you about this too. So not only did, first and foremost, the Daily Caller debunk this nonsensical story that was lied. It was a lie, first of all, fed to the media. They never checked to make sure it was true or not true, because that's what they do, because they want Governor DeSantis not to win the primary. But not only is that the case, but in addition to that, I will tell you that in my own public school system, the teachers were required to take training from a trainer, and part of that training given to the teachers included curriculum that they were supposed to force feed upon children. And it was, among other things, about how there was white privilege. Okay, now you've heard this stuff before, but here's the thing that's really interesting. Included in it was poems. "Poems are very important," says the curriculum. "And here are some examples of poems." And they were all poems read at inaugurations, presidential inaugurations of Democrats. Not one poem, or not one speech, or not one anything, nothing from a Republican inauguration, only from a couple Democrat inaugurations. And so here you have in Florida a poem read at the Biden inauguration. And I think as a general principle, many parents would say, and I don't really know the contents of this poem just to let you folks know, but the fact of the matter is most people would say, hey, if this poem were allowed as an age-appropriate poem, and at the same time you had a Republican poet, and you had their work also, available to the students at the same time, people would say, okay, fine, fair. But that's not what ever happens in the public school system, because it's all about the indoctrination. And in this particular case, it's all about getting Ron DeSantis to never, ever, ever get elected as president of the United States. And so there are all kinds of tweets about this. And of course, you have Politico, which is, continued to lie. Even the Miami Herald wrote that the school system had barred the poem and issued restrictions on several books within the elementary school, including Gorman's poem. All of it was nonsense, which, of course, I'm sure you all figured out. So here you have a new governor or a new candidate who's going to be running for president of the United States, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. He does kind of still seem like a new governor, though, in my opinion, because he's just such a fresh face and also is able to articulate those conservative ideals as we've all talked about. And then already you have the NAACP essentially saying all of his policies are racist and that all people in Florida are racist, which is why there is a travel advisory. I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, this is the new Jim Crow. The NAACP, ironically, which fought Jim Crow, among other things, is engaging in Jim Crow by saying, no, we got to segregate people out of Florida. You can't go there. Absolute nonsense. And then you have, of course, the Florida Hatchet Job, where Politico and The Guardian and others, the Miami Herald, said that there's this poem that's being banned, and it wasn't true, and it was because of Governor DeSantis. His book banning. It's just ridiculous. And so I'm looking forward, as all of you are, to hearing this announcement this evening at 6 p.m. on Twitter Spaces. And I'm really curious, Chris, as to whether some of the news programs are going to carry this Twitter Spaces announcement live on their networks. And if they did, boy, what a coup that would be for Twitter Spaces and for Elon Musk. But they probably should, because this guy is by far, as far as I'm concerned, he's the most likely candidate to beat Donald Trump in the primary. And by the way, I know there are plenty of Trumpians out there too. I get it. I understand that. I just want to make it really clear. I want to make sure that we win in November because there's so much at stake. And this is why I just believe that this guy's ability to articulate his policies and that he's put these same policies in Florida, and he's going to do the same thing as president of the United States with at least a Republican Congress. And we will finally move America forward as a country of opportunity and fairness and equal opportunity, and get rid of this stupid word called equity, which means equality of outcome. And that's why I'm looking forward to seeing this, not to mention it's historic because it's going to be on Twitter Spaces. So next up, podcast listeners, targeting kids. Target is tuck friendly. I just want to say this. Target, ladies and gentlemen, the department store Target, has decided to put an entire section in its store for clothing for Pride Month. And included in that section is our clothes, I should say, for trans kids. Now, you heard that correctly. It's not clothing just for adults. They have an entire trans kids section, including for babies. Babies. I'm not even talking about just kindergartners. I'm talking about like babies. So imagine being some sort of woke, nutjob, left-wing idiot and going to Target and buying trans outfits for your baby or for your child. It's disgusting. And then in addition to that, Target, of course, is going to carry bathing suits for the dudes who want to wear, women's bathing suits, and they are tuck friendly, apparently. I think that is the process by which, what, Chris? What happens? I guess you tuck your package between your legs and, or something like that, or you just go freebasing, with that, and you just let it all hang out. And so, as you can imagine, with the Budweiser stuff, right, where you have this massive pushback, and Budweiser sales, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, are down 28%. 28%. That's catastrophic for a major brand. And they're staying at 28%, and I hope it continues. I do. It's the only way to teach corporate America to stay out of politics and to keep their hands off of our children. In addition to that, though, now you have Target that's doing this, except that they're actually targeting children. I mean, Budweiser is beer for adults. Okay? And the adults didn't like what they did because they're like, you're attacking my values. But Target's like, well, we're not just attacking your values. We're trying to groom your children. And what I think is remarkable is Florida passed a law that says you can't take your kids into a strip club, right? Or a drag queen show, which I think is good legislation because they're minors. So you can't take your child into a strip club because people are taking off their clothes, right? And they're sexualizing their bodies and so forth. So it's for adults. And drag queen shows are all about sexualization. That's for adults. So it's legal for adults. That's fine. But you can't bring your children in there, and children themselves can't go in there. Yet Target can sell clothing as a groomer organization, a groomer department store to children, an entire section, and encourage children to put on clothes of the opposite sex. Why would you do that if you're not trying to sexualize children? Of course. So there's a tweet of a dad, and he's in Target just for a regular visit, right? He's just like minding his own business. And he's there probably just to buy some regular goods, maybe deodorant, let's say, for example, or some shampoo or what have you. And he walks into Target, and right there in the front of the store is this clothing section for trans kids. And he's so disgusted. He's like, I got to get out my camera and I've got to like show people what's going on. And so this is only, I think, a 10-second or 15 or 20-second clip at the most. And this is just a dad, some random dad in America in a Target store going, you won't believe how this is being shoved down my throat. Excuse the pun. And here it is.
Kids section, baby section, like.
He's showing baby clothes.
This is a baby section, kids section of Target.
Baby section, kids section.
Like, it's crazy. Crazy.
Yep, that's a dad. He's like, this is crazy. It's a baby section of baby trans clothes. And here's the kids section of kids trans clothes, like, kindergartners, first graders, 4 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old. And he's like, this is crazy. And he's disgusted. And he's showing people, I've already talked to like 3 or 4 people about this Target matter. And I didn't even bring it up. They brought it up to me and they said, that's it. I'm not going there. And look, ladies and gentlemen, this is the only way we stop corporate America from shoving this crap into our lives and trying to take advantage of our children and groom them. And I really think we need to talk about this more. I really think we need to use that term. It's corporate grooming of children. That's exactly what it is. If we talk about it that way and call them out on that, I think they're going to be pushed back more and more by the citizens. It's just that people are so busy just trying to feed themselves and work and earn money. They're just like overwhelmed with this stuff. And I know someone said to me the other day, they're like, what do you think's causing all this? Like, what's behind this push? And was it you, Chris? Didn't you say it was like the ESG folks that are just pushing this stuff on corporate America and giving them a score or something?
Yeah, that's what I read.
Yeah, I guess maybe it helps them out with a score. I think we should do some research on that to find out. Apparently, there's some ESG score that you get, and then the far left activists look at that score that the corporations get, and if the score isn't good enough, they're going to go after the corporation. So the corporation, like Target, I presume, is like, oh, we're going to start hiring, with DEI and get the diversity, equity, and inclusion hires in here, and then those hires are going to go bring in a trans section for children. So there's a whole article about this. You'll read this. Feel free to look it up. And please don't go there. I would really appreciate it. Please don't go to Target. It's just ridiculous. And so next up, podcast listeners, we have the school choice emergency in North Carolina. Did you know that? There's an emergency that was declared by Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, who's a Democrat, mind you, over the fact that the legislature in North Carolina passed a sweeping school choice bill. Now, to be clear, School choice, ladies and gentlemen, means that the money, the taxpayer money collected by states and counties, follows the children so that the children and parents can talk with one another and decide on what school is best for them. So either send your child to the local public school, the district in which you live, or you choose a private school, which could be a religious school, which could be an independent school. It could be a military school, or they're also charter schools, which are quasi-public schools typically. So the money follows the kid. Now, most of you know this. I understand that. And it seems perfectly reasonable to me, with all the crazy stuff that's going on in the public school system, that you might want to consider choosing the school that not just fits your values, but also is truly going to teach your child to read and to write and to understand science and to be functional in society and useful and productive in society and successful. Well, Governor Roy Cooper decided that he has to declare an emergency because school choice is so dangerous. Can't make this up, because this guy is the classic Democrat. And it's all BS what he says. We have a short clip on this from the governor of North Carolina, and here it is.
I'm declaring this state of emergency because you need to know what's happening. If you care about public schools in North Carolina, it's time to take immediate action and tell them to stop the damage that will set back our schools for a generation. Here's what's happening in the next few weeks. Their private school voucher scheme will pour your tax money into private schools.
So, yes, that's North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper talking about how dangerous school choice is in North Carolina. So he declared a state of emergency just a couple of days ago in an attempt to stop the state legislature in North Carolina from passing the bill. Cooper released a video announcement in which you just heard, part of it that is, in which he declared a state of emergency, arguing the state's public education system is no less important than other emergencies. Now think about what he's saying. And this is why we know this is a lie, because when you are empowered with money to choose which school to send your children to, okay, you can call them vouchers, you can call them educational savings accounts, whatever you want to call them, you can still send your child to the local public school. But because you're now a consumer, will you choose that school? Well, some people may, and that's fine. And it should be properly funded, and it will be with those vouchers. Or you can choose private schools. And he's saying, well, we have an emergency with the public education system because they're going to drain it of resources. Well, welcome to competition. Welcome to free speech. Welcome to free America. Welcome to the free market system. But no, he wants you only to shop at Walmart, basically, right? There's only one store allowed in the state of North Carolina, and it's Walmart. You can shop nowhere else. There will be no other retailers to sell anything anywhere in North Carolina but Walmart. And I'm going to declare an emergency. That's what he's saying about the public school system and education in general. There's only one way to learn, and it's in the public school system. You are not allowed in any way, shape, or form to learn in any other way. So I'm declaring an emergency because competition is bad. He continued, the governor continued, that is, quote, it's clear that the Republican legislature is aiming to choke the life out of public education. I'm declaring this state of emergency because you need to know what's happening. If you care about public schools in North Carolina, it's time to take immediate action and tell them to stop the damage that will set back our schools for a generation. Cooper's announcement drew intense backlash on Twitter as government overreach, as it should. And I can tell you one such comment was, quote, neutering the abuse of emergency power by the executive branch should be priority number one for every state. In other words, state legislatures need to look very closely at executive emergency powers that governors have to make sure that they simply cannot overstate their constitutional bounds. Does seem somewhat reasonable because really, if you're a Democrat in the state of North Carolina and you don't agree with this, legislation, then you should defeat the people that pass the legislation. If you think it's unconstitutional, then you can always take it to court, as Democrats are famous for doing. But the fact of the matter is, this guy, Governor Cooper, who's a Democrat in North Carolina, is a hypocrite. Because guess why? His kids went to private school.
That's how it always goes.
Isn't that funny? The governor of Maryland, by the way, first black governor of the governor of Maryland, he hates school choice and is doing everything he can to stop the poorest of the poor black kids in the city of Baltimore, who live in the most unsafe neighborhoods in America, from going to boarding schools where they would be much safer or private schools. He wants to stop that. And yet the governor of Maryland went to private school from K to 12. But Governor Cooper is the same way. Well, my kids get to go to private school. What a hypocrite. And this is happening all across America. Why, Democrats? This is my question for you Democrats out there. And yes, we do have some Democrats that listen to this program. Democrats, you tell me, why would you believe anyone that will not allow you to have school choice with public funds when they themselves don't believe in public education for their own children? Okay? This is not a question of pro-public versus anti-public education. Public education should always be an option for parents. It is an option. You can send your kid there or not send your kid there. It's up to you, mom and dad. You decide. Well, guess what? Time after time, Democrat governors decide not to send their kids to public school. And why? Because they've got plenty of money. They get to do it because they can afford it. You can't afford it. So you're stuck in the crappy old public school that your kid goes to. And just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, I know there are plenty of very good public schools in America. There are, to be fair. And you know what? Those public schools should be emulated. But increasingly, Democrats are poisoning the public school system by creating groomer environments, and they're censoring free speech, and kids are graduating illiterate. And so parents just want schools to fit their values, number one, and they truly want their kids to learn. Well, guess what? The governor, Roy Cooper, wants that too, which is why he sent his kids and is sending his kids to private school, in K to 12, mind you. And here's one example of why school choice is so important in America. Get this. It's a very sad story. And this is the New York Post. A Maryland dad, this is just a few days ago, was beaten to death after protecting his kid in a middle school fight. Now, listen to who killed this Maryland dad. A Maryland father was brutally beaten to death outside of his home while protecting his children from a group of teenagers and adults who wanted to finish a fight that actually started at school, according to the man's family. Christopher Michael Wright, 43, was outside of his home last Friday when he was confronted by 3 teens and 2 adults who were looking for his fiance's 14-year-old son, who had gotten in a fight with another teen at Brooklyn Park Middle School, right outside of Baltimore City. This was reported by WBAL TV in Baltimore. So, the fight started in school, and that wasn't good enough for the teenagers. They and some adults came to the kid's home. When the 43-year-old dad, or stepdad in this case, Christopher Michael Wright, told the group that the boy was not going to come outside to fight them. If he's not going to fight, the folks said outside, then you're going to fight, Wright's fiancee, Tracy Karapinski, told the outlet. The group attacked Wright, who's the stepdad, who was later taken to an area hospital where he died from a traumatic brain injury on Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case if you don't think that we need school choice in America, because this is the crap that's going on in public schools, because there's no accountability, none whatsoever. In a normally functioning public school system, when you come across children that are the absolute troublemakers in school, it actually doesn't matter what's happening at home at that point. You're doing them a favor by sending them to a military boarding school at that point. Remove them from the public school system, put them in the military boarding school. They need discipline, and you will save their lives, and in this particular case, save the life of other people as well. And yet the Democrat Party doesn't want to allow it. And they can't allow it. Because if they do, they will no longer be, the Democrat Party will no longer be the majority party in the United States of America. And why would they no longer be the majority party in the United States of America? Because of the simple fact that the teachers union gives them tens of millions of dollars every year to fund their campaigns. And it's this circle of teachers unions. And again, not all teachers are bad. Most teachers are really fantastic. They love to teach. I want to put that it's 100% true, including in public schools. But I know in my own state, the legislature passes crazy bills that won't even allow teachers to remove the bad kids. They're prohibited from removing bad kids because of equity. Oh, that kid, you're denying him his equity by removing him from the classroom. Oh, yes, but little Johnny, he threw a brick at me. And at one point, he hit me in the back, and I got, I had to go to the hospital. That's okay. That's part of your job as a teacher. We're not going to remove little Johnny from the classroom. This stuff is happening all over blue states. All over blue states. Because they've lost their minds. And they've locked your children into these crappy schools. And that's got to end. And Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina is the greatest example of hypocrite, of that word hypocrite in America. And he should be a poster child for the idiocy of the Democrat Party and why you should never elect a Democrat at this particular point in American history as governor of your state. And every state needs to implement school choice today, right now, yesterday, as fast as possible. So next up, podcast listeners, we have Go Woke or Go Broke. That's right. Ford is going woke. Ford is the latest major brand to go woke with a new commercial. You heard that right. Good old Ford has a commercial. And Ford F-150 trucks and F-350 trucks and so forth and all their different, there are two Ford Raptor pickup trucks that are seen racing in this commercial through the desert. And at one point, they're full of mud. You can't really see the trucks. I mean, they're so tough. They're so bad. They're so awesome. They're so manly, these trucks. And then, of course, the trucks hit some water. I'm not sure how they're in the desert doing this, but apparently they hit some water. And some of the mud, not all of the mud, but just some of the mud happens to wash off. And guess what? You've got all of the pride LGBTQ color, rainbow flag colors, and the truck is painted in that. Now imagine that. Do you think that Ford drivers want, we have a clip of this. Here it is. So that clip, if you heard it and didn't see it, I'll certainly explain to you. It's basically the truck and it's driving, as I explained, it's full of mud. And then suddenly, mud is washed off at that particular point in the commercial that we clipped for you. And you see all the pride colors. And do you really look, who cares? Who cares? Who cares about that, right? I mean, by that, who cares about the color of a why does that matter? But this is, help me to understand, Chris. Look, I live in Southern Maryland. Pickup trucks are everywhere. I own a pickup truck, just FYI. And everybody I see driving pickup trucks, yes, there are some women, but it's almost always guys. And these are gentlemen who love their pickup trucks. They're on all different, some are super luxurious inside, and some are like mine, which are more kind of basic. And they're blue or they're brown or they're white. Occasionally you'll see one that's kind of like a maroon color. But I'm sorry, what you don't see in America are Ford F-150 or Ford Raptor trucks, if you will, that are all pride colors. Have you seen one?
Not in my lifetime, no.
So apparently Ford's decided that this is a new rainbow colored car audience that they want to have. And I guess, for every rainbow Raptor you buy, you get a case of Bud Light because they can't even give it away. Before one of the trucks outruns the other, it is shown that it has been painted with the LGBT rainbow flag, complete with transgender baby blue and pink colors. Bingo. The words redefining tough are displayed at the end of the commercial, and the word tough also flashes in LGBT colors. Ford now reportedly thinks it's tough to wear the colors of a movement that aspires to legitimize the sexual mutilation of minors. The advertisement, which was virtually created by Ford's European division and is more than 10 months old, has only recently gained the attention of Twitter users and has received over 1 million views. Well, that's because Ford was trying to hide this, right? It was in their European division. And once again, they're pushing this groomer. Look, if you're gay or lesbian and you're an adult and you want to drive this is what you want to do, and you want to paint it any color, that's your choice, right? But they're trying to market this to children. And they're trying to convince children how cool it is to be trans. And that includes fully mutilating their bodies. So now even Ford has decided to go woke or go broke. It is just ridiculous. So next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is.
Dum 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 dum.
And it's the dumbest bill in America. And it's your fault I'm fat. That's right. It's your fault I'm fat. The food portion just isn't big enough. Well, believe it or not, in New York City, ladies and gentlemen, there is a bill that has passed the city council. And apparently the governor is going to sign it, as far as I can tell, that allows fat people or fat individuals to sue over weight-based discrimination. But what does that mean? It means that if you go into a restaurant and you're fat, like really fat, and you sit down and the chair accommodates everybody in the restaurant, but not you, then you can sue the restaurant because the chair isn't big enough. Or maybe the chair just isn't strong enough. I'm not really sure. Well, look, when I read this dumbest bill in America, obviously, when I read this bill and when I read this article about it, and it's, by the way, in a number, it's also in the Daily Mail. It's definitely worth reading. It's really fantastic. The first thing I thought of was Rodney Dangerfield, because he used to always have these fat jokes. We have a clip on that. The famous comedian, he's now deceased, sadly, Rodney Dangerfield, making fun of fat people, which is very politically incorrect, I know. Doesn't matter. It's still funny. Here it is.
And this girl was no bargain either. She was fat.
Fat, huh?
Fat when she wears high heels, she strikes oil, okay? She's fat.
Okay, so not politically correct. All right? Look, I'll be the first to admit, I'm always trying to lose weight myself, okay? So I'm very sympathetic, but there is a big difference between being 25 pounds overweight and being 150 pounds overweight, okay? And I know there are certain situations that are health-related situations that make this very difficult. Okay, I'm giving a pass for those too. But we all know that most of these situations are self-induced, okay? Someone did not force feed Krispy Kreme donuts to you one after another, like for 35 days so that you could gain 60 or 70 pounds. You did it, okay? You're responsible. And this is going across America right now, right? You're not responsible for your own actions. Someone else is. So the New York City Council green-lighted in an overwhelmingly 44-5 vote legislation that would effectively protect obese individuals from alleged discrimination based on their overweight heft. Mayor Eric Adams, a Democrat, is expected to sign the law next month, reported the Daily Mail. The bill was sponsored by Councilman Sean O'Brien, a Democrat who was inspired, get this, to introduce the law after he gained 40 pounds during the Democrat-led COVID-19 lockdowns in New York City in 2020 and 2021 too, by the way, and part of 2022. People treated him differently after the weight gain, Albrow claimed. Well, then lose the weight, okay? You gained 40 pounds during COVID because you were sitting behind the TV, eating Krispy Kreme donuts. Now it's time to lose it. Well, people treat me differently. I should be able to sue. Quote, this law is designed to help those where weight has nothing to do with the essential job functions of a row, Albrow said, just like any other protected category. Like, so being obese is a protected category? Like race or gender or age? This will be a new protected category and a claim that you can bring before the Commission on Human Rights. You do have a human right to be fat if you want to. But you know what? The restaurant owner does not have the responsibility to have chairs that are 3 feet in diameter so that you can fit in it, right? Or maybe 4 feet in diameter. So, look, this bill is all about the lawyers, okay? The trial lawyers, right? The trial lawyers love this kind of legislation because they're going to sue over everything. And I'm sure you've seen these videos on TikTok and also on Twitter where you have the really large person trying to make it through the aisle of an airplane. Look, I'll be the first to admit, airplanes should make their seats more comfortable. They're not comfortable at all, okay? I know that. There's not enough leg room. It would be great to have more arm room. I get it, okay? But we're all in the same boat. And I've seen people who wouldn't fit in 2 seats in an airplane. They would need the whole row. Well, what they're saying, these individuals, is we have the right to sue now. And in addition to that, we have a law that's going to back us up to hold you liable because I'm fat. And it's your fault I'm fat. And that's the dumbest bill in America. And that's it from Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining me, for Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, True Social, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.